This is the biggest day for Nissan in over 30 years. Over at Nissan's press page, after several months of constructive discussions with Renault, remember, Renault owns over 40% of Nissan. Nissan Motor Co. today announced that, subject to approval of the board of directors, it has reached an important milestone in its discussions with Renault on defining new foundations for their partnership. Nissan was sinking in 1999. They were on the verge of bankruptcy and disappearing from the automotive world that we know. Along comes French automaker Renault, and without Renault, Nissan wouldn't be here today, but also at the same time, Nissan hasn't been the Japanese automaker that we used to know for a lot of different reasons, especially under Carlos Ghosn. Things changed massively for the brand. But in this big reversal, Nissan could regain its identity back. For better or for worse, time will tell, but let's read into the details of what Nissan's doing to reclaim their power once again. So they're saying this ambition is to strengthen the ties of the alliance. Remember, the alliance is not just Nissan and Renault, it's also Mitsubishi. So they want to maximize value creation for all stakeholders with a 3-stage approach. So stage 1 is reloading the partnership with high value creation operational projects. This would consist of key projects in Latin America, India, and Europe, which would be deployed along 3 dimensions: markets, vehicles, and technologies. Step 2, maybe the biggest one that we'll see at least on the consumer end, is enhancing strategic agility with new initiatives that partners can join. So Nissan's investing in Ampere, which another big company just used Ampere recently, and that was NVIDIA for a codename of their GPUs. But Renault wants to use it for their EVs, and the EV and software. And this Ampere platform has not only the EV physical platform, but it has a software platform founded by Renault. And we'll get into more details on this in just a little bit. And the last of the 3 points here, a balanced governance. And this is probably the most important thing for Nissan as they see it, because they've been bossed around by Renault since 1999. Rightfully so, since they saved them from bankruptcy, but a balanced governance and cross-shareholding to foster accelerated operational efficiencies. So Renault and Nissan would retain a 15% cross-shareholding with a lockup obligation as well as a standstill obligation. They would both be able to freely exercise the voting rights attached to their 15% direct shareholding with a 15% cap. This is massive for Nissan. They now actually have a say for the first time in over 23 years where the company will go, what's most important for them, and they now essentially have a voice for the first time in 2 decades. Renault Group would transfer the remaining shares, the 28.4% that they have outside of the 15%, and to a French trust where voting rights would be neutralized for most of the decisions, but the economic rights of dividends and share sales proceeds would still entirely benefit Renault. Agreements are being finalized from both companies, so we'll get more details in the coming days, but the gist of this, the fact that Nissan is posting this as an official press release, means this is a done deal. It's just they're tying up some loose ends at this point. So we're going to go to automotive news because they have some additional details on Renault and Nissan. The official date could be as early as February 6th, where we get all the details, especially the loose ends that I mentioned earlier. Let's read about this new platform, Ampere, that Nissan is buying into. We don't know the size of the stake that Nissan's buying into it. Some people are saying that Nissan could be buying into it up to 15% of this EV Ampere platform. Also, Qualcomm is expected to take a stake in that venture, which they absolutely need to have a tech giant get in there and really have the capital investment to bring them forward, but also the stability and technology in order to make this a viable EV platform in a very competitive era. The EV spinoff will focus mainly on developing and selling fully electric vehicles that comply with strict European emissions regulations. Well, we know every single EV fully battery electric vehicle will comply with European emissions regulations. The question is what kind of vehicles will we see from this here in North America? And the sky's the limit, and I don't know when we would see it. I made a video on my other channel talking about Alpine, Renault's performance brand. It could be coming back to the United States in 2027, somewhere around there, with a few new models, mainly crossovers. Nothing exciting to be like, I guess, performance crossover EVs. And I don't know how they would be sold. Maybe through Nissan dealerships. It's hard to say. That's a long time off in the future as well. And they would be based on this Ampere platform. Nissan and Mitsubishi will have access to the technology for use in their European market lineups, and Nissan will continue to work separately on its own EV technologies as well. So there's the big question mark is, well, is this platform just for the European market, or will we be able to see these vehicles or this platform in Nissan vehicles here in the United States? And we do have other EV news from Nissan. Nissan warns dealers Ariya supplies will be tight in 2023. Look, the vehicle was supposed to be on sale in North America in mid-2021, if I remember correctly, and then it kept getting delayed. And we heard before the vehicle even made it here stateside, they were cutting off orders in Japan. So this vehicle is going to be very hard to find, to buy, just to see them on the street. The dealers are very upset that they don't have more of these vehicles because their customers want them, especially if they're coming from a Leaf. They want to have a new EV that's not a decade old or so, that's going to provide more power, more technology, a better ride, etc., etc., etc. And for sales volume, not counting the Ariya, but for the entire lineup, they're expecting an increase of 19% versus 2022 here in 2023. And that's pretty congruent with what like Honda is expecting. They're expecting around a 25% bump back in production for 2023. Every dealer was saying how many customers they have waiting or wanting to order the new Ariya. And Nissan has declined to disclose US allocations of the Ariya, but a person briefed on the matter said about 6,000 units were allocated for the fiscal year 2022, which ends March 2023, but they're expecting allocations to go as high as 30,000 units, which I still don't think is high enough, especially you got to remember Nissan was the first mover out of the Japanese and even the Korean automakers with EVs. One dealer at the meeting said he was shocked and deflated at the lack of the supply for the new Ariya. And one dealer said, why can't we produce the Ariya in any acceptable volume? Customers are walking and saying, I'm sold, let me buy one. But we can't tell them when it's coming. We like to have more demand than supply because it holds transaction prices. For the average dealer, this is a good thing as long as we have some throughput. And this is, the theory that a lot of us have about the automotive market. They never want inventory to get back to where it was in 2019, for example, because they're just making so much money, not having to incentivize vehicles. The dealers are making money, not having to keep cars on the lot or having to sell below MSRP, really, unless the economy tanks, and then things will have to change. But in the meantime, the lack of supply is really in the favor of the dealer and not the consumer. And Nissan doesn't want to ramp up too much because they're probably losing money on the Ariya. The price of the commodities have tripled or quadrupled. And if you look at sales of the Ariya, that tallied in the fourth quarter was just 201. And you got to remember, with the new tax credit, Nissan does not qualify anymore. At least, the Leaf does, but the Ariya doesn't since it's built in Japan. But I am going to end it there. Do you have hopes for Nissan going forward? I think it's exciting for them to finally have a voice in their future. I just don't know what it means for the company long-term or short-term. I guess short-term would be, hey, they have access to this EV platform that we may or may not see in North America. But also, you guys down below, if you enjoyed today's coverage, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more Nissan Infiniti news. If you haven't seen my nighttime or daytime review of the Q50 that I just drove, check that out. It's still a good vehicle, even though it's about a decade old at this point. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you guys. Have a great day, and stay tuned for my Mazda CX-90 reveal.